The following is a local resident producers program. The program content is the sole responsibility of the producer and does not necessarily reflect the views or policies of CATV2, Oshkosh Community Access Television, the City of Oshkosh, the Oshkosh Cable Television Advisory Commission, or Time Warner Cable.
Hi, good evening. Welcome to Eye on Oshkosh. I'm Dan Rylance, the co-host of this program. As you can see, Cheryl Hentz, the other co-host, is not with us this evening. She's a little under the weather. This evening we're turning to youth, and our two guests tonight are two editors of the Oshkosh North Star newspaper and the Oshkosh West Index. On my left is Brianna Mueller, who is the editor of the North Star, and I asked you to send me a little bio, so I'm just going to read it. I am 17, a senior at Oshkosh North High School. I am an active member of the Polaris National Honor Society and a co-president of Stage Society. I just finished up the fall play, The Green Light, which I student directed with Chris. As you know, I'm editor of the North Star, and we are beginning work on our 4th issue. I've also been featured in the Northwestern and wrote an editorial for the Green Bay Press Gazette after attending Badger Girls State this summer. I was a member of the community response team last year, but had to step down due to scheduling conflicts. On my right is Danielle Baudhuin, who is, you said, spread editor of the Index.
Yes.
That's the title, okay. And she sent me a bio as well, and so I'm going to read that. I am currently a senior at Oshkosh West High School and will be attending UW-Madison next fall. I plan to major in both Spanish and secondary education, emphasizing social sciences. I've been involved in drama, competitive speech, and index for all 4 years here at West. In addition, I've also been taking Taekwondo classes at Martial Arts America for over 10 years and have been an instructor there since 2004. I really enjoy working for the Index because we form great relationships with the other editors and our faculty here at West. So thank you both for coming. Maybe we could talk a little bit about your newspapers that you put out first, and maybe we could just start with you, Brianna, and tell us a little bit about your newspaper, the North Star, how often it's published, and what you do with it.
Okay. Our newspaper is run completely by our students. We have one advisor, and he's actually new this year, so it's kind of been a learning experience for all of us, because while it's my first year being an editor, it's also his first as an advisor.
Okay.
And we are trying this year to take a more creative aspect to the newspaper and not making it necessarily like a yearbook publication, but more of giving kids a chance to kind of highlight their talents. And we've got a lot of new writers, and that's pretty much my newspaper. So.
How often do you publish it?
Once a month, about
once a month.
About once a month, sometimes 2.
Okay. How about yours?
Our publication comes out 8 times a year.
Okay.
So it's roughly once a month. Sometimes we get a month break. I believe we get a month break around January, February. Our advisor has been with us for quite a number of years. We actually, I believe, his 100th issue was last year, so we had a big celebration for that. So he's been around for a while. Otherwise, it's basically student run. The editors and the students take care of all the stories. And if there's any problems, which normally there aren't, that's when the school steps in, but we haven't had any issues with that, so it's pretty much up to the students.
What do you two do as editors?
I am our only editor, so it's basically my job to assign stories. I lay out a lot of our pages, and I make assignments to the younger staff that are just learning how to lay out. I actually just came from that a few hours ago, kind of teaching our younger staff how to lay out pages, so they're kind of learning how to do that with our InDesign program. And I help edit, obviously. I read their stories, and I make corrections and kind of give them tips on any problems they might be having in their stories.
You do the same sort of thing? Or?
Sort of. Our paper is laid out a little bit different. We have I want to say a dozen editors for specific, like we have a sports editor and a features editor and a news editor and whatnot. I am actually it's called the spread editor or the in-depth editor, so I take care of the center spread of the paper and basically work with that. But all the other editors are assigned their sections, and we have students sign up for the stories, and then the other editors take care of editing the stories, getting the pictures for it, laying out the pages, and helping the writers.
Okay. What's your greatest satisfaction of being editors and your greatest frustration being editors?
Greatest satisfaction, I've got to say, is just going and getting that paper from our printers on our distribution days.
Feels good, doesn't it?
It's a wonderful
Yeah.
feeling, and it's kind of become a tradition for me and my photo editor, and we drive out to Ripon and we pick up the paper and we always go out and have breakfast together, and it's just really a great feeling to see it printed and all that hard work and hours that you put into it. And sometimes there's that downfall of kids not turning their story in or something, but our staff is very good about triumphing over those things, and we always say you just have to have a little faith, and it always comes through. So
How about you?
Yeah, I gotta say it's the same thing, just picking up the paper, and you can print it off at school when you're laying out the pages, but it's just the plain paper and it's so small, but when you get it in print, it looks so much better, and you get to see everything as a finished product.
It's nice to see your work done, isn't it?
yeah.
Yeah. How about on the negative side? What other than people probably not turning in time or whatever, what are other frustrations that you have dealing with staffs?
Our staff is really tiny, so it's, if there's one downfall, it's kind of like the downfall of the entire team, basically, because our staff totals under 10 people probably. I mean, and we're talking less than your editors. So I've got sports editor and me, and that's about it. And we've got a photo editor, and she's just in training now, and our downfalls are usually pretty small because it really is just timing issues and making sure people are committed, because our paper can't afford to have people not fulfilling their responsibilities, and they realize that, and we're very dependent on each other, so they're good about not letting people down.
How about you? Same thing? Or?
Pretty much, but normally if people don't turn in their stories for a news or a feature section, it's a lot easier to pull another story from somewhere else. But as far as our entertainment section and our sports section, those are pretty timely, like with the movie releases and getting the movie reviews. And if we're not getting those in till Saturday night when we're trying to finish up the paper, it gets pretty frustrating because 3/4 of the paper are done, but you're looking at 2 blank pages and trying to pull something out of nothing.
Do editors write editorials?
Yes.
So you write editorials?
Yes.
Tell me about an editorial you wrote.
My most recent one was the one I finished 2 nights ago that I just placed on the page.
Okay, so it's
that
fresh.
It's fresh. I just placed it on the page yesterday, and this particular one was about punishing public displays of affection. A lot of people have been kind of talking about it on the news and stuff recently, where kids are getting detentions or suspensions for just hugging their friends in the halls, and it just kind of struck a chord in me, and I thought it was kind of ridiculous to think that kids were getting that sort of punishment for merely hugging their friends. And I kind of went off on that, and also on sometimes the rights of minors being violated, and just because they're vulnerable and they're in a state of youth, being taken advantage of. So
hugging isn't a bad thing necessarily.
no. And I kind of ended it off on the note that, I encourage them to, continue that, and not necessarily being rebellious, but it's just kind of to the point where I think that the world needs a little more peace than the hostility that exists in a lot of the other
Is
worlds.
it too early to tell whether hugging has increased at North as a result of it?
I don't know, because the issue isn't out yet. So
It isn't? Okay.
we send on Monday, so I can tell you later.
Okay. How about you?
The first editorial that I wrote was in response to Britney Spears' comeback performance and the negative press that was going on about body images and whatnot. So I went off on that and kind of talking about how you're looking at somebody who's considered fat when she's probably a smaller size than I am, and just how that makes average everyday people feel. And then the last one that I had done in our second issue was regarding the advisory structure that we have at our school, where we're losing, because we now have a split lunch this year because of the number of students we have. So our club meetings are really suffering, especially since I'm the drama club president, and it's really difficult to try and get things done if we can only meet once a month during the Friday advisory that we have.
Any response to that?
Actually, yeah, I found out during our one of our student council meetings, one of our vice principals had actually read the article and started to realize, okay, maybe this isn't working. We should maybe look into how we can improve the system.
Free speech issues come up at all for you as editors? I mean, have anyone said, I don't think you better go with that, or anything like that at all? Or are you pretty free to do what you...
We're pretty free. We don't have what's called prior review. I don't know if everyone knows what that term means, but it's basically just where you have to turn your entire paper into your administration, like your principal or your assistant principal or whoever, before you ever send it and before you ever print it. And they basically get to put their stamp of approval on it. Currently, we're not at that point, and I'm really glad we're not, because that really means that the students get to print what they write and what they want to talk about. And that's a really great thing that we have that, and we don't have issues with our administration censoring us at all, because we have enough respect for our boundaries, I think.
How about you rejecting an article written by one on your staff on some grounds? Have you ever run into that at all?
Nope.
No.
I have always run their opinion columns and their editorials, because if they have valid information to back it up, I will support it, because it is a student newspaper, and even if I don't agree with their views, I want to run them because it's something they feel strongly about. So there's a chance that someone else in the student body is going to agree with them.
What about you, Danielle? Have you reject things, or?
Normally when we put our story list together before we even start writing any of the stories, we get together as an editorial staff along with our advisor, and we throw out ideas of things that are going on in the community and in the school. And if something comes up that's kind of controversial, or we need to discuss what angle we're taking it from, it's hashed out at that meeting. So we make sure that anything that would be considered inappropriate,
you screen it at that point.
Yes, or it's given to an experienced writer who can handle the situation delicately. For example, we had lost one of our faculty members, and obviously we wanted to run a story on it because she was an important member at the school.
Front page of that issue, right? Yes.
And we made sure that we had an experienced writer who was able to handle it, and it was handled correctly. But other than that, other inappropriate things we normally don't run.
How many copies do you publish, and what's your sense of your readership? How many students in your high schools read the paper?
We print 1,900 issues at the current time, and they get distributed to every classroom, and we hand out, I'm not exactly sure how many we hand out to each class. It's usually just a handful or so, and kids always take them, and even if they just turn to the one page and read a couple things, we know there are a few items in our paper that they always read, particularly our kudos and cuts, which is basically us kind of saying, this is what's good, this is what needs improving, in the community, in the nation, whatever. That's something that kids usually like, and our columns and reviews and that kind of thing. Those are really popular with students. So I know that's what they're reading. So even if they only pick up the paper for that, I know that they're at least getting something out of it. So.
How about you, Danielle?
I believe we print between 2,200 and 2,300 copies. We hand them out to every first hour class. We get first hour counts, so we make sure that all the students and staff can get one. And then we also have a subscription list for some outside. Normally they're either members of the community on the school board, or past West graduates or parents that want to keep involved, so they receive our paper. And it's the same kind of situation. There's specific things that all the kids are going to read, or if they see an opinion column with kind of a edgy kind of title, they're going to read it. And our thumbs up and thumbs down, which are kind of the same thing, just like the 10-second editorials.
You're both seniors. Can you pull off the top of your head tonight the article that you're most proud of, or the article that perhaps generated more discussion than others?
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. I'll go for it.
There's one article I will never forget, and one interview that I will never, ever in my life forget, and that was one that I did with members of the Westboro Baptist Church, and they were a group that were protesting at funerals of soldiers after they'd come back. And a lot of people heard about that. It was covered in the Northwestern and all kinds of news about these church groups coming to funerals and having no respect at all to these families. And I phone interviewed these people who live in another state.
Is it Kansas where they were based?
Kansas, I believe, yeah. And I called, and I could hear the church music playing in the background. I could hear them I could hear him screaming the scripture, and I'm sitting here talking to the pastor's daughter.
Ah.
And it was a heated interview, and kind of some of the things she was saying to me I didn't necessarily agree with, and I wasn't manipulating my answers or anything, but I just kind of felt like I needed to stand up for my own beliefs somehow in the things she was saying also, and kind of say, where was the respect in this, and trying to get her to defend what she was saying. And it was a tough article to do and a difficult interview to do because I was only a sophomore when I did it. I'd only been working on the paper for a year, and I'll never forget that because it was quite an experience.
Now, this was strictly your idea to go for this sort of thing?
I was assigned the story
okay.
because our editor always wanted to challenge me.
Uh-huh. It was a good challenge, right?
It was a good challenge, and he basically said, so this is what you're going to do. These people are nuts. Now go. and I just said, okay. He hands me the phone number and a cell phone and says, go sit in the hall and interview these people. And I did it, and I was scared, but I did it. And it felt good after I wrote that story, because seeing that published, and I can still say, I talked to those people, and now they're facing a lawsuit. And, that was pretty big news. I mean, we're talking, it's on CNN's webpage now that these people are having to pay millions of dollars in, grief, basically, to these people because of that, so.
Hands a little sweaty when you were doing it? Or?
A little bit. Because it was very heated, as I said.
Yeah.
So.
How about you, Danielle?
Probably, before this year, I had been working, I was writing a lot of entertainment reviews, so obviously nothing too heated there. This past year, then I was the features editor, so I was doing kind of newsy stuff. But this year, now that I'm getting into the in-depth reporting, I'm able to do more stories on stuff that I'm interested in. The past issue that we had done was actually related to the war as well. I talked to 2 seniors this year who had gone to Fort Benning and another military base, the name escapes me, and they had done their basic training this past summer and were expected to leave to go overseas within the next year, and talk to them about their feelings and what was going through their mind. And then we also spoke to 2 faculty members at West who had husbands that were serving over, and so we got to see kind of a more personal view of the war and how they were feeling about it. And so it kind of brought the war that people tend to push so far away, it brought it closer to home so they could see how people are actually affected by it.
It's interesting, both columns that you mentioned both deal with the war in Iraq.
Mm-hmm.
Can we talk about the war in Iraq a little bit?
Sure.
If we were working on editorials that we were going to do tomorrow for our newspaper, and I'm looking for ideas, give me your sense of where I should go with an edit on Iraq. What strikes you as the most important thing that we should talk about?
In our case, since it's a student newspaper, I think you'd need to find some way to make it appeal to students.
Okay.
And probably give them a little bit of background
Okay.
about it, because I think kids don't necessarily have the kind of background on it that they need. And I think that's very important before you start any sort of political topic,
Okay.
is that they have a good understanding of the background on it. And then, if it was an opinionated column, I'd say that it's about time we get out of there. So, I'd go from that point, I guess.
I like your beginning. I think that's... Now, what would you do with it?
The same kind of thing. You have to preface it with that, because there's so many teenagers who take what's on the media and run with it because they don't understand it. If I were writing the column, though, I wouldn't necessarily say pull out now, because we're so involved over there that we would need to gradually pull out and make sure that they can sustain what they did.
5 years, 10 years? Don't want to put a...
Don't want to put a
Don't
number
wanna
on
put
it.
I wouldn't put a number on it either,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
I wouldn't say like tomorrow let's get them all out.
Well, we couldn't anyway. It would
You
take us
can't,
a
but
year to get them all out anyway. But do your peers talk about the war much? Is this an issue for you people at all, or not?
it
There's
used
no
to be.
draft with... I mean,
No.
it's
It used to be something that was more talked about, but I think it's kind of cooled down a little bit almost, and not many of my peers really talk about it.
yeah.
I mean, our staff was a little bit bigger, and we had a lot of very politically charged members, I guess you could say.
Sure.
But they were all seniors, and I lost about 6 of them, and they were pretty much my political peers, if you will, and they're who I talk to about things, and they're all off at college now, but it used to be a big news, and it used to be something we talked about a lot, and, you know, it's kind of not anymore, but
Gone on too long, we've maybe...
I think that's probably part of it, yeah.
You know, when I was your age, it was selective service and drafts, so
Yeah.
when I turned 18, you know, I had to go get my selective service card, and then we had various ways of being drafted. And so for my peers of my age, it was Vietnam was an issue. But we have kind of a professional army now where it's not,
Yeah.
we're not drafting people. But I want to talk about student government a little bit. Is student government relevant in your 2 high schools? I mean, does it have any power? What does student government do, if anything? Start with you this time.
Go, you're more involved in that, yeah.
I was going to say, normally get to sit back and
No,
listen
we're going to switch.
Our student council this year has gone through kind of a change. They tried to take a more governmental approach. Before, everybody knew them as the party planners.
Okay.
If there's a dance, go
Yep.
talk to student council. They'll tell you when the next one is. This year, I know a lot of my peers, a lot of seniors, have been trying to make the student government more involved and try and get some more power in the school. I think it's just in the early stages, though. I'm not exactly sure because I'm not a member of the student government, but I know they've tried to get like representatives elected from each grade, as far as I know, to try and get some more voice.
Has student government accomplished anything at your school for the years that you've been there?
We've had some cool dances,
Cool
but
dances. Okay.
but I mean, I'm sure they've done more. They've done some fundraisers and stuff, but again, I'm not
Okay.
heavily involved in that, so I don't want to downplay or
I
upplay
understand.
them.
Okay. How about you?
I think that would be a good way of putting it, party planner, because that's kind of what student council does. It's a lot of
Okay.
the homecoming, the prom, all those different things. So ours does a lot of that. I would like to say that I knew a lot about it and could really tell you what they're doing in a governmental aspect, but as far as I know, that's more like along the lines of our Amnesty International Club and stuff that are actually doing governmental type things, and they're doing the petitions and signing the letters and sending them to government forms and stuff, but not a whole lot within our own school, I would say.
Let me run this idea by you. I would argue that the highest percentage of non-voters in this country are people 3 or 4 years out of high school. It's the late teens, early 20s. And one of the reasons I think that is true is they've grown up in a system in public schools where government basically has been sort of not very important. And they develop some cynicism that government doesn't work because, well, we didn't do anything. And you both mentioned parties. You know, that's hardly a major
Yeah.
agenda item for participation. You think there's any truth in that at all? That are you people going to vote when you get to be?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's
Yes.
not. Yeah.
Yeah.
But maybe a little cynicism that student government at the high school level is really kind of not very serious.
Well, it's different because we're looking at our school government compared to our national government.
Okay.
I know the national government has more on its mind than when to throw homecoming.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's true.
So I'm definitely going to be voicing my opinion, especially on the national government. As far as voting in the city, I don't know if I'm going to be an active voter there, but definitely when it comes to my national government, I'm going to voice my opinion, as small as it may be.
How about you?
I will vote everywhere.
Okay.
After being involved in a committee on the school board, I'm always going to vote for school board members and representatives and all of that now that I've really seen how it works.
Okay.
And I'm always going to vote for national elections. I think that that's a very, very important civic duty, and I've written columns about that and really said that that is one of the most important things in our country is voting those representatives.
Let me play devil's advocate with you. We've been listening to presidential debates for the last 6 or 9 months already. If you were voting in the presidential primary for 2008, would you vote Republican or Democrat, and who would you vote for in a presidential primary if you could vote as of next year? Start with you.
I don't even know.
Okay.
Just because, to be quite honest, I've tuned out all the debates or
Okay.
the debates that they're having
Yeah.
because they've honestly been running their campaigns for almost a year already, and the election is in about a year. So after hearing it for, a year, 9 months, and knowing that it's not coming up for a while, I'm tuning it out until things start to heat up and until probably spring, when then the decision has to be made. So I honestly don't even know.
If you're at Madison next fall, it'll be pretty hot. When it comes
Yeah,
to,
I would say so.
Yeah. How about you?
Democratic Hillary Clinton.
Okay, well, that's rather specific. Okay. Let's go to school district issues. We kind of were talking a little bit before we came on. School district has spent not as much time as the presidential primaries, but almost as much time on the school boundary issues in town here. And one of the issues clearly is a disparity between population of Oshkosh North and Oshkosh West. What are your thoughts about the disparity issue specifically, but about the whole boundary change issue in general? Do you have any thoughts about that?
I think if they're going to make a decision, they have to make it. You read editorials and letters to the editor in the Northwestern about people who have been following this for years because it's just been tossed up in the air for years, and they can't make a decision because they can't cut the boundaries without somebody being upset that they're sent to a different school, or their cousins are getting split up, or their friends are getting split up, or I'm a sports player at this school, I don't want to go over to this school, or I like this teacher. So if they're going to do it, though, they have to do it. They keep pushing it off because nobody wants to play the bad guy, and nobody wants to upset a group.
Can't please everybody.
Exactly.
Yeah. What do you think?
I feel like nothing is getting done. I spent months on a committee where it was a roundabout, here, let's talk about this. And then, 3 weeks later, we were talking about the same thing again and again and again. And it felt like nothing was getting done. And like you said, everyone wants to be happy, but you're never going to satisfy everyone. And there's not one solution that's going to fix all of our problems. I think it's going to be a process over several years before we actually get it where it needs to be. But there are serious issues that need to be addressed, and I think that they need to make a decision and, stop thinking about the dollar amount and thinking about who it's going to protect and who it's going to help. Because right now they're thinking so much about the budget concerns and how much we're in debt and not enough about how it's affecting the kids.
One of their early proposals, and this is a good one for you to think about, or you probably already have, they were going to split the high school 9-10 and 11-12. What was your response to that?
I hated it.
You hated it.
I think it's an awful idea. I was firmly against it. I was amongst 20, 30 adults saying, oh, but this could really work and this is what's good about it. And I said, no, I'm a high school student and I know what this would feel like. And what's going to happen when a 9th and 10th grader are coming into high school and they don't have the chance to mature because they're not taking classes with older students. It's going to create athletic problems because what if a student's at a different level? Or, there's just so many problems with it. And I think I think the maturity thing is probably the biggest problem with it because they're just not exposed to the same diversity as they would be if they were in a full 4-year high school.
What'd you think, Danielle?
I completely agree. I was completely against the split because there's some kids that, as a freshman, seniors and you're friends with seniors. I befriended a lot of seniors at a younger age, and if I would have been at a split school, you never get that experience, and you don't get the upper hand where you get to talk to your older friends about the war, or about other issues that some of your friends aren't ready to handle or choose not to handle. So there's just a huge
that thing is now
block.
off the table. I mean, it's not around, but it was an early proposal.
Yeah.
What do you think of you went to elementary schools, I assume, middle schools in town? What do you think of the proposed, the latest one is K through 3 in a school, and then they go 4 through 8. And what do you think of splitting elementary school grades 1 through 3 in one school and 4 and 5 in another school? What's your response to that?
I think it's less of an issue than the high schools were because it's not the same maturity levels. It's a different kind of development when they're that young. I think there's a more potential for it being okay because it's similar to the concept of like Webster, where it's the elementary school and the middle school being housed right next door.
Right.
So like your siblings are still nearby, and those kids that are still reliant on that family kind of connection still have them close. And as long as we don't destroy that and start splitting up the families, I think we're okay. But I would say, keeping them in the same building is probably a good idea, but you could still maybe split the K3, 4 to 6 or
I
so.
think if they were going to make any change soon, that would probably be one of the easier ones that they could get past. Yeah, other than the siblings possibly getting split up and kind of causing a problem for the families during that year where one of them's at another school, one of them's at a different school. Other than that, as far as the social aspects that were the problems and the conflicts in the high school and the sports and JV and varsity,
Doesn't exist, does it?
it doesn't exist.
Do you think we should have an elected student from West and an elected representative from North be advisory members of the school board?
You want to take this?
They were actually talking about that. We have we have a forum every year between the two papers where the school board candidates get together and the students are the only people that can ask questions during the debate. And that was brought up, and some of the school board members were saying that, it'd be nice to get the students' opinion. And, I'm listening to them and I'm saying, yeah, you want to say that, but you don't want to hear our opinion because, like you were saying before, the adults are like giving opinions and trying to think back to when they were in high school, what was important to them. It's so much different, and they don't have the same perspective. And as much as they would like to take ours into consideration, they won't.
Yeah. What do you think?
I think that putting a student representative on the school board would make them listen to us, and I think that that's important because I think that our opinions can frequently get overlooked, and they're really important because, as you said, that we bring a different kind of perspective to the table. We have different experiences, and even though they can try and put themselves in our shoes, things have changed. Many years have gone by since they were in high school, and we have a completely different spin on things, and we bring a lot to the table that I think they might not realize.
Maybe we have 2 edits on that.
There you go. It's not a bad idea.
You are the consumers. I mean, and most consumers in most groups are represented, but consumers in education in this city and other cities are not represented. Yeah, well, just an idea. What's been the best parts of your education at your 2 high schools? What, when you're leaving, you're both seniors. What, if you had to write a paragraph on what the best thing about West, what would you say as far as your education is concerned?
I don't even want to think about that.
You don't want to? I'm sorry.
I would definitely have to say that I have a really strong connection with a lot of the staff members. I've gotten to know them. Even past teachers, there's a couple of teachers I haven't even had that have taught me more than I can learn in a classroom, and I'm so grateful to have met them. And I'm not saying this is a West only thing because everybody makes connections with teachers, and that's probably the most important thing aside from education being second. That's probably the most important thing I'm going to take away from West.
Did you know each other before tonight?
No.
No? Okay. Just I had to throw that out.
No.
How about you?
Like she said, it's going to be difficult for me to think about that. We do senior counts at the end of the year, and it's going to be really difficult for me to think about, having spent 4 years at this high school. It's the longest I've ever been at a school because I've moved a lot as a kid. I've only lived here for 6 years now, and to be here for 4 years has been great because I've really bonded with a lot of teachers. I have felt like I really belonged at this school, and I got really involved, and I loved my clubs and all the people that I met in them, and it's just a different experience. And I know it's kind of like, I consider high school this kind of bubble that's unrealistic. Like, you're going to leave it, and when I get to college, that's when you're an adult, and this real world is coming, and high school is your one chance to kind of have this bliss. It's just kind of like this perfect thing, and it's not real, but it feels nice while you're in it.
High school's like the water wings before you get...
basically.
How about suggestions? Say you were the advisory members on the school board next week, and they said, well, you're both seniors. Can you name 1 or 2 suggestions that we could improve education in Oshkosh? What would you come up with?
Oh my gosh. I wouldn't really want to prey on one particular thing. It'd be really difficult for me to pick out one thing that I want to see happen. Oh gosh. Can I pass?
Absolutely.
Give me a second.
Okay, otherwise, I don't know if they have it north, like the advisory system like we do.
I don't think so.
Probably not. Every Friday we have either an advisory period or it's called an activity period. So it alternates. During the advisory period, it's basically like homeroom. And during the activity period, that's when all the clubs that can't function because of the split lunches have to try and cram in their meetings.
Okay.
So if you are active in 3 or 4 different clubs, you just have to pick and choose.
Okay.
And the last column that I had written was stating how it's ridiculous with the number of things or ways you're supposed to get involved to get into college or to get letters of recommendation if you're going into the workforce right after, to try and get all that crammed in when there's no opportunities to get involved in the school.
Okay.
And so one of the things I would fix is fix the boundary issue first, so we don't have the overcrowding of the lunches, so we can get back to one lunch and all the clubs and student government and everything can start functioning normally again. Because especially the freshmen, because it's a freshman only lunch at our school, so we have to have a special meeting just for the freshmen for the newspaper.
Okay.
Our students that have come to the meetings to write the stories has been going down just in the freshmen, especially because, you know, you see the older kids in there, you might go in there and see what the meeting's all about, but if you see, you know, some freshmen in there, the population goes down, and it's just not how it used to be. So I would fix that issue first so we can fix our club system at our school.
If we're talking specifically at high schools, blocking in houses, block scheduling,
Okay.
kind of got overlooked, and I think that could be something really, really good for our schools. And as much as kids might hate the fact of having a couple longer classes, I think it could be really beneficial for them.
Help our viewers out. To give us a little definition of block scheduling.
Block scheduling is basically where you have fewer class periods and making them longer.
Hour and a
Where you're
half
talking about 90 minutes, an hour and a half, basically. And that's really great for classes like your science classes where you have labs and you can get those completely done in a day. Or a math class where you've got a big test or something. It gives teachers more intensive time with their students, and they can really focus on the needs of their students, I think, better than they can in the 40-50 minutes that we have now, because they will have more time to teach their lesson and they won't be getting cut off by the bell like teachers so frequently do now.
I have 2 girls and 2 boys, and my 2 girls went to a junior high, 7th, 8th, and 9th, and they said the most difficult year for them, you know, was the adjustment the first year in junior high because of all the clothes issues and what they had to wear and not. Whereas my sons both said 12th grade was a blow-off. They didn't like the 12th grade at all. I'm just wondering, looking back on what was the most difficult year for you people starting with middle school, or see if you could answer that.
Well, I think probably the first 2 weeks of high school were really difficult for me just because I came from the parochial school system.
Okay.
So I went from a class of, I think we had 50 kids to a class of about 500. So it got pretty big, but I adjusted quick. But I think in terms of difficulty in like classes, your senior year can be difficult if you make it difficult, but definitely the junior year when kids start taking their upper level English classes and their AP US history, and they got their big binders and they start freaking out because they have to get their study guides done. It's a lot because you go from sophomores where you have your core teams and your big bubble, as you like to put it. You go from a bubble to no bubble, and it's a big change. It's good for kids because they wake up before they go to college, but junior year is by far known at our school, probably at North too, I don't know, as the big year.
What's the average grade at your high schools? Are you all A students?
No. Definitely not. I think a lot of our students have a lot of potential that they don't meet. I think that most of our kids could go to school and could be A/B students, and they just don't put the effort in, and they don't do their homework, and they are not responsible about some of the things that they do in their actions outside of school frequently, and they just kind of blow off the assignments and things. And you know, I think if everybody really just took that responsibility, did their work, they could be at that level.
Extra credit gives you a higher grade in some cases, or not?
Extra credit is a touchy subject with most of my teachers. They just
was with me too.
Just like refuse to give it, basically, because it's become something that kids kind of depend on. They're just like, I'll skip this assignment because I'll get extra credit later, and that's not something they necessarily deserve, because if they're willing to skip an assignment then, why do they deserve the extra credit later?
Yeah.
So.
Glad you said that. Yeah. I want to turn to lifestyles a little bit. Let's get a little more personal, so if I'm getting too personal, just cut me off here.
I think it's okay.
I'm kind of curious about, cell phones and iPods and and cars and kind of, can you just run with that a little bit? Do you each have a cell phone?
Yep.
Can't live without it.
Okay.
No.
How many hours a day do you spend on a cell phone, or minutes?
I think I love talking on my cell phone, but the only time I really talk is if it's a conversation with like my cousin, who I'm pretty close with, or if I need to call my boyfriend or something because he doesn't live here.
Okay.
But it's texting. Texting, I think, is
Yeah.
because it's easier. You can't call somebody in class.
Yeah.
Sometimes you can text them. Not that I do, but you can.
Not that I do. I'm not as bad about the texting, but I do spend quite a few minutes on my phone because my mom's at work a lot, and I'm kind of in touch with her a lot to make sure things are all going on there. And being the editor, I'm practically always on the phone for something or another. Somebody calling me to ask me a question about a story. When is it due? What is this? What's your word limit or whatever. So I guess my business aspect, if you want to call it that, I'm on it a lot for that, and different club things. I would say a lot. Teachers and
These cell phones you don't pay for?
No.
No.
I share a plan with my mom.
Okay.
Parents, yeah.
Okay.
But as
All
soon
right.
as I think I'm getting a plan, like
I am when I go away to college.
when you go to college,
Yeah,
then
yeah.
you got to start
More
paying.
minutes, because you're going to need the long distance and all of that. Yeah.
You have cars?
Yes.
Not my own. I drive my mom and my grandma's.
Okay.
They live with me.
You have the Mac iPods and all that for music, or?
I actually had a cheaper version. I had the Dell
Okay.
iPod or the Dell MP3 player, but then my friend was getting rid of his iPod, so I jumped on that because it was only like $50, but I did not fork out the $350 for it because I don't make that much.
Yeah.
But
How about you, Brianna?
Haven't done that yet either. Never had an iPod.
Okay.
I have a few MP3 capabilities on my cell phone, but that's about it. But it only holds about 12 songs, and I just don't feel like blowing that kind of money.
Now, you both have computers, because I nagged you to death on
Yes.
your computers, so obviously you use computers. You use cell phones more than computers?
I'd say it's the opposite for me. I'm on the computer all the time. My computer is my livelihood. That's where I do my writing. If I'm not doing news writing, I write personal things. I write poems, I write stories. I love creative writing. So that's kind of where I do that, and then that's where all my pictures are. It's basically like the new photo album. You don't have all of those, and people always used to say, before I get out of my house, I'm going to grab my photo albums. For me, it's like, that's where all mine are. And that's my connection to a lot of my friends that were seniors and graduated, and I can email with them or whatever the case may be. That's kind of your connection to a lot of people.
You too?
yeah, it's
Yeah.
the same thing.
Talk about college a little bit. I think, Danielle, you said you were going to go to Madison, and you told me walking in that you had an interview tomorrow. Is that right, at DePaul?
I have a tour, and then audition and interview are on Saturday.
Okay. And what would you like to do?
I am going to major in theater studies.
Oh, really? Yeah. I have a daughter who was unemployed with theater studies for about 5 years after her degree, but she loved it.
Yep,
you
that's
know?
the
But-
thing.
but
I'm very passionate about
It's
it.
a tough trade, as you know.
Yep.
Yeah. Future of the United States.
Oh, geez.
Where are we going?
We're gonna fall behind China.
Fall behind China.
We're going nowhere fast,
Yeah.
Okay.
basically.
Yeah.
I have a European history teacher who likes to get us to think about the world right now and get us to watch the news more often. And it's basically a rule of history that no country can be on top for this long. And it's not necessarily that we're going to come crashing down and become, a third world country, but we're not going to stay on top, especially with how lazy we are. Or
Yeah.
some of us.
I think that the United States needs to kind of assess their power almost, because I think that they have more in their hands right now than they necessarily deserve, because I don't know that they know how to use it. I don't know that our government knows how to handle all the power that they have and all the influence that they have over other countries, because we run things right now, and I don't know if we deserve it. And I don't want to say I'm unpatriotic. I love my country. I went to Badger Girls and I learned all about that. But it was an awakening to kind of talk about it for an entire week and really think about where our country's at and what needs to be changed. But that's why we have people like myself and you and other active teenagers that are going to question that and who are going to be active in the political scene and make a difference and turn it around. Because I think we could turn it around, because there is no question.
Did 9/11 make you less safe in Oshkosh?
No.
In Oshkosh, no. Oshkosh is small.
Yeah. Are you going to shoot us for our overalls? You know, that's kind of the way I think about it. You know, are terrorists really going to prey on Wisconsin? What do we have to offer them? You know, unless they're targeting the entire nation, which is a horribly frightening thing, which they could be. But I feel safe here. Our government might have its problems, but they do protect us.
I think the only thing is some of the kids, when that first happened, their minds jumped to, oh my gosh, Oshkosh truck, they don't like us because we make the tanks.
We make tanks.
But we're not the only place that makes tanks. We're right smack dab in the middle of the country, so unless they're coming from like Canada,
I think we're okay.
I think we're okay.
Fear of terrorism overdone, you think, over the last 4 or 5 years?
Yeah.
I think they blew it up, so now we're almost desensitized.
Yeah.
They crack so many jokes about, okay, go to the airport, arms out, take your shoes off.
And
get
the
all
color
your
systems are just a joke now, and it should be taken more seriously. But I think that some of the safety measures that they've put in place are getting extreme. You know, the Patriot Act and that kind of thing just kind of outrage me, and I just feel like I wish our world wasn't in this place, but it is, and now we need to deal with it.
Talk about role of women a little bit. I just clipped this out. I was in an airplane yesterday, and it's an article about global gender equality. And it was done by the World Economic Forum, a Swiss-based think tank. And just for fun, what countries do you think came off on top on global gender equality, and where do you think the United States was in terms of all the countries in the world? I'll give you some clues, but just off the top of your head, what countries do you think in the world are really leading in global gender equality?
A lot of European
I was gonna
nations,
say
I'm thinking
Europeans.
they're usually more liberal. I'm thinking France.
Any place in
England.
Europe?
I'm thinking France might be pretty good.
Okay.
Could be completely
Europe
off.
is a good, the first 4 countries were the Scandinavian countries.
Okay.
Sweden, Norway, Finland, and Iceland.
Okay.
And the 5th country was New Zealand.
Oh.
Okay? Of all the countries, where are we at, you think?
I think we might actually be pretty low down on
Yeah.
the scale, and we shouldn't be because we're such a modern civilization, supposedly. But I really don't think we are.
We ranked 31st.
Yeah.
That
Wow.
doesn't surprise
that's,
me.
that's actually scary.
Now, in the variable of political gender equality, we've gone up, but where we're down is in the economic area. We're just not equal in terms of pay, and that was why we're down to 31.
Yeah.
But so that's a challenge, I would think, for young, talented women like you in the future, that you're going to fight for equality in terms of economic. You know, the 500 Fortune companies are only 2 that are women in the top 500 in the United States.
I'm gonna stand up for women. That's one thing for sure. It was kind of the way I was raised, and it was. I guess I'm kind of I'm a self-proclaimed feminist, I guess you could kind of say, and my friends will attest to that. And I stand up for the rights of women, and I'm very, very much liberal-minded and opinionated, and you know, pretty much any class I take, you find that out about me, because I find some way to spin it. I find it.
I kind of sense that already, and I've only met you for about 50 minutes, but that's good. Yeah. Let's say we come back in 10 years, and where do you think you'll be in 10 years?
Ooh, I don't want to think about that.
You don't want to think about that?
Hopefully by that time I'll have made my way out of Madison.
Uh-huh.
'Cause
I hope so.
You can kind of get lost at that school.
Yeah.
I don't know, hopefully set on what I'm doing in my career.
Graduated from college, yes, please. Probably living wherever I went to college. I'm thinking, you know, you just get attached to that city, and hopefully in a good job, and hopefully by that point I'll have established myself somewhere, and you know, whether it even be in what I am planning on majoring in, because it could change completely, but
Sure.
you know, I've got that direction, and I just kind of hope that I'm settled in that. I'd say settled is a good word, you know, just kind of.
Are we? Do we have significant others at this point in terms of boyfriends, or don't I dare ask
Yeah.
that question?
At this point, or are we
Yeah.
saying like 10 years?
I hope so.
So we do have boyfriends.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Serious boyfriends that are.
It's been a week.
A week?
That's cute.
Oh, that's infatuation, isn't it?
Thanks.
Yeah, I've kind of been seeing my boyfriend since midsummer. It's actually a little
Okay.
bit tough. He is down actually at Fort Benning doing
really?
his basic training.
Okay.
Oh, wow.
So it's kind of been tough.
hard.
Yeah.
But he's coming home in about 4 weeks, so he'll be home for a
He's
little
from
while.
Oshkosh?
He's actually from Eden,
Okay.
which, talk about Oshkosh being a small town. Eden's like
Eden's
500. It's down by Lamira.
Yeah.
And yours obviously is in Oshkosh because you've only been going
Amro.
with him for a week, right?
I don't know, but yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. That's good. Yeah. Have you checked out other schools? You said you're going to go to DePaul. Did you?
I'm trying for DePaul, but I am applying to Eau Claire and Madison also.
Okay.
But
Okay. DePaul is your first choice.
DePaul is my big dream school, and it's in the city that I love.
Okay.
But tuition's crazy,
Uh-huh.
and unless I get some pretty good financial aid, I'm probably going to end up going to Eau Claire or Madison. But got to look at the state schools and then
Sure.
fall in love with the private. But
How about you?
I just basically did the one generic application to a lot of the UW schools, Oshkosh, La Crosse, Milwaukee, and Madison. And I had looked at Marquette. My sister, my mom, my dad, and my grandpa had all attended
Ooh.
Marquette. But it's kind of expensive, and especially if I'm going for something like education, you got to look at what you're going to be making when you come out.
Sure.
And I was also looking to apply to Northwestern just to see if I could get in.
it's a
but
good journalism school.
yeah,
Yeah.
but when
So
I
you've done the pre-con, you've done the SAT or
ACT.
ACT?
yeah.
How were they? I mean, I don't know tell my scores, but I mean, were they
Okay.
tough tests or?
I took it twice,
Uh-huh.
just to be safe.
Uh-huh.
Took writing both times, just kind of felt like I wanted to get a feel for how I was doing in the grand
They do have the writing component in there now, don't
Yep.
they?
And it's
Yeah.
ACT
important.
plus writing,
Yeah.
yep. Yeah,
Yeah.
Schools are now
like
requiring.
requiring it,
They
yep.
should.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Because
You
if you
took
can't
the
write, if
ACT
you can't
test?
write
Yeah.
well, what are you
Oh,
doing in
gosh, yeah.
college?
Yeah. Have you been over tested? You think? You're kind of in
Maybe.
the testing generation of.
It was worse when I lived down south, because I lived
Okay.
in Texas and Oklahoma, and
Okay.
they tested almost every other year.
Okay.
But when you live in Texas, you had George Bush with No Child Left Behind in its early stages, and that was scary
Yeah.
because you were tested all the time, and standards were so much different than
Okay.
Wisconsin's are, and
Higher, lower,
higher,
higher.
much more difficult.
Really?
It was a completely different thing, and I'm glad that I got the experience of a different school district and a completely different educational system, but it's just weird compared to Oshkosh. So,
We got a few minutes left. I just want to play this. What questions were you hoping I was going to ask that I didn't that you'd like to ask?
I
Did you
had
come-
I had nothing really in mind.
Nothing
I was
in
just
mind.
I just kind of came with an open mind.
Yeah,
I was
well,
gonna
you've
talk
done
about
that and
whatever.
done that well. But we got a couple minutes here, so let's just think. What question should I have asked, or what question do you want me to ask that I didn't ask that would be helpful? You have to go first this time because last time she had to go first on the pause.
Oh, thank gosh.
I don't know. You covered the newspaper,
Uh-huh.
and that was about the only thing I knew we were going to do,
Okay.
and we covered
That's
that
all I
pretty
told you.
thoroughly. Yep.
Yeah.
That's about the only thing you told me. So
Yeah.
that's about the only thing I came in with, and we kind of covered that.
Yeah.
So, and I expected a lot of stuff about the school district and community, and I'm glad we did that. A lot of community issues, I think, are always able to be addressed, and
Especially on something like this where it affects the community.
Yeah.
Community sees.
where a community sees teenagers talking about it, and I'm glad we got to come here and talk about stuff
Yeah, I am too.
because yeah.
How about you now?
Because people realize then that teenagers have more of an opinion, that
Yeah.
we watch what they're doing, and we probably have a more critical eye than some of the adults and some of the parents of teenagers, because we're directly affected. We get, the benefits or the repercussions of any changes or modifications that are made to the schools or to the school district. It directly affects us. Granted, we're both going to be graduating, so
Yeah.
anything beyond that, it's not ours. But
Can I share something about you about aging? One of the challenges for me aging as a person is that all my peers want to compare perfect lifestyles to their generation. And anything that they hear that's younger, they poo-poo it as not being as important as valid. And I just think that's such a narrow focus. But you go around people your own age and they just, well, this is the way we did it. This was a better way. And the truth is they're just different ways. And I have 4 children and 5 grandkids, so I kind of, well, they do it different, and it's fine. There is no one way. But so I think young people have a lot to offer, because you do see the world differently. You've experienced a different world, and so I'm really glad that you could come on and kind of share some of these ideas in terms of where you're going and what you're going to do and that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Are you interested in city government at all in Oshkosh? We've had a lot of changes. Is that something you don't follow, or?
I won't be here much longer.
Okay.
Like
you've
I said,
been here through the crisis of the last few months, right?
I was. Like I said, I did CRT last year,
Okay.
and that was kind of interesting being involved in it. And I could see myself being involved in it in whatever city when I'm a homeowner and I have kids of my own. And I would like to be a school board member, or at least involved in their district, because I want to be directly involved with those kind of decisions, because I feel like you need to take responsibility for them. You don't have the right to complain unless you are involved. That's kind of my way of thinking, at least, that, and unless you're informed and you are involved, you don't really have a right to be upset with something that they've decided on. So
Participation is the key.
yeah.
Yeah. How about you? You follow city government at all? Or not so
City
much?
government, not so much, but I plan to get involved wherever I end up, especially because you talk to anybody that knows me, I'm extremely opinionated, which is why my advisor told me to jump on this opportunity.
I used to work LB Hall for precinct voting.
Okay.
And one of the issues would be a college student living in a different town. Do they vote in Oshkosh, or do they go back and vote in their home community? And that's an issue that you people will have to decide, because you can go either way, but you can't go both ways. If you're registered here, then you can't vote in Chicago. And of course, Chicago, it'll take you 6 months to get registered to vote anyway.
Yeah.
But you can't have both. And so a lot of students come up to vote and they say, well, gee, should I vote in my own area, or should I re-register here? And most of them re-register here, but they only do it on the national elections, the presidential elections. They don't vote on the city and county, school board, and state races. They only really vote every 4 years on the presidential, which is more important to them. So, well, I want to thank both of you for appearing and talking, and I wish both of you luck. I hope you have a break a leg at DePaul with your interview and your tour, and I hope you wow them at Madison, because I've enjoyed talking to both of you, and thank you very much for coming on the show. So
Thank
I
you for
guess
having us.
I'm going to say goodnight for my co-host Cheryl Hentz and myself, and say goodnight to Brianna and Danielle for appearing on Oshkosh. So we'll see you next time.